Now, after this introduction, let us now come to the basics. Let us now examine what the learning outcomes are. After studying this module, each student shall be able to understand the role of HR managers, identify different roles of HR managers, differentiate in terms of planning and organizing for work, and how the HRM function manages people, how people are acquired and developed, and the administration of policies and programs and practices which are used for the management of this human resource which has been acquired. Therefore, this is a very complex part of the role of the HR manager. Further, it is also necessary to define the HR manager's skills and qualities. So, you would be learning about the skills and qualities of HR managers. Today, all enterprises, business enterprises, are facing an extremely challenging international as well as a domestic environment. In recent years, there have been various significant changes taking place in terms of the economic, political, social, technological and the legal environment of Indian business. Each business is surrounded by other entities and a general environment around itself, and this can be identified in the various dimensions as has been mentioned, that is economic, social, technological and so on. So, there are vast and frequent changes that are taking place in all these dimensions in the business environment, and each business faces many challenges because of these changes. Government policy of economic liberalization and the process of globalization of the businesses across the world has brought many opportunities and threats and also certain challenges to each modern business organization. Successful organizations are those which change their structures in response to these needs. So, for carrying out these changes, we need some agents of change. What better than the human resource manager? So, we should now examine the role of the human resource manager, who is responsible for taking steps and to consider these changes and design and execute various innovative mechanisms for developing skills and competencies of the human resources which are controlled by the manager, so that they can all handle together these changes that are taking place in the environment, the global environment, the international environment, as well as the domestic environment. So, today we shall be talking about the role of HR managers and how it has undergone a dramatic change over the years. Traditionally, the role of human resource professionals is in many organizations, and it has been to serve and systematize the policing arm of the executive or the management. So, the role was traditionally more closely aligned with personnel and administration, and the functions were viewed by that of a human resource manager were viewed by the organization more in terms of paperwork. It was a role which was very routine and did not involve so much of imagination and challenges. But as the global environment has been changing, globalization reflects the state of business which has no global boundaries. The rise of multinationals and transnational corporations place a new requirement at the behest of the HR managers. Apart from personnel acquisition, that is the recruiting people, the development and retention of these employees or people whom we would prefer to call human resources, the role of the HR managers is multifarious, such as they act as agents of change, they are problem solvers, and they are integrators, that is, they integrate the different resources and human resources particularly in an organization. The manager of human resource department is responsible for ensuring that the department employees are well versed in their area of expertise. The various disciplines of HR require expertise in things like compensation, benefits, safety, payroll, recruiting, as well as training and development. Ideally, which means the expertise of a human resource manager has to be across various disciplines. Now let us really come down to what is the role of an HR manager, a human resource manager. In most of the big organizations like multinational corporations and even other Indian big companies, the HR manager is expected to be performing a very important role of bringing in coordination and cooperation between and amongst the employees at various levels, and then to channelize their efforts in the right direction so that they could achieve the overall goals of the organization. It's people in the organization, the human resource in the organization carries out many important activities and different jobs and works. The managers, particularly the HR managers, have the important job of organizing people so that they can effectively perform all these activities. The human resource managers suggest how to strategically manage people as a resource in the business and not merely treat them as workers or people, but rather to treat them as a human resource. This includes managing, recruiting, selecting, hiring employees, coordinating employee benefits, and suggesting employee training and development strategies. In this way, the HR professionals are consultants, not workers in an isolated business function. They advise managers on many issues related to employees and how they help them to bridge the gap between the employer and the employees. an HR manager has various other roles to fulfill. He performs the managerial function as well as the operative function. Some of the important roles of the human resource manager in an organization are discussed. First of all, the very foremost role of an HR manager is planning and organizing for work, people and HR management. Within this, the first aspect is the strategic partner. In today's organization, to guarantee their viability and ability to contribute, HR managers need to think of themselves as strategic partners. In this role, the HR person contributes to the development of and the accomplishment of the organization-wide business plan and objectives. So, it no longer remains a routine job as was thought in the past. The HR business objectives are established to support the attainment of the overall strategic business plan and objectives. That is, the HR manager's job is also to sync, to align the HR objectives along with the overall strategic business plan and objectives. The tactical HR representative is a deeply knowledgeable person about the design of work systems in which the people contribute and succeed. So, this again is a very important role of the HR manager. The HR manager manages the interface between HRM processes and systems. He formulates and communicates HRM policies and acts as the conscience of the employer with respect to people issues. Obviously, the employer cannot be everywhere in the organization, and many of the aspects of management which actually should be the responsibility of the employer or the owner have to be carried out by agents like the HRM manager. So, this is one of the important aspects which the HRM manager carries out. He is the conscience of the employer. He manages people related issues, things like merger or an alliance or an acquisition or an express takeover. The role of the HR manager is to convey the philosophy and the values regarding the management to the rest of the organization. This is again another very important strategic role of the HR manager. Now, in terms of organizational design, the HR manager analyzes work processes and recommends improvements wherever necessary to the concerned departments, and he also recommends options for organizational design and organizational structure. This is the second major role. The third major role, as we have been saying, the HR manager is an agent of change. Therefore, the third important role relates to change management. An HR manager should be aware of the changes in the inward and outward environment. So, let us imagine that there is a HR manager. He would have to look at what is going on within the organization, but he cannot shy away from what is going around organization. So, he has to look at both the dimensions, both inward and outward. He suggests to the management the impacts of any change in the organization on the employees. He coordinates and facilitates the change process so that employees can better respond to the changes that are taking place in the environment. He also provides support to the structures that have been built and developed for helping the employees during such change. Such structural changes that take place would have implications for employees, and therefore it is the job of the HR manager to manage these kinds of structural changes as well and help out with the employees of the organization. Now, let us come to the next aspect. This again is a very important aspect. Corporate wellness management. The HR manager develops and communicates policies and procedures relating to the well-being of the employees to the management. He manages the occupational health and safety and formulates employee assistance programs and health promotion programs. Therefore, the health and safety of the employees or the HR human resource within an organization is also a responsibility of the HR manager, and this is known as corporate wellness management. People acquisition and development. Now, you would notice that originally people acquisition was more or less treated as a routine job of recruiting people. Now, this aspect has also become more complex and more vibrant. So, therefore, now let us see what people acquisition and development means. The human resource manager works with the executive management to ensure that the most appropriately qualified employees are chosen to be positioned in the most appropriate roles which are available within the organization. When hiring needs arise, then he or she, the HR manager, develops a job description, advertises the position, and then screens the potential candidates, interviews the applicants through a good sound interview process which has to be objective and very effective also, and then the HR manager also performs a background check because it is necessary to know from where the candidate has come. Very often the HR manager contacts the referees who have been mentioned in the application form and invites other executives to be a part of the interview process and to ensure a good fit employee, a new employee who is taken for the job happens to be a good fit. That means that the kind of job and the job description and the job requirement should match the prospective employee in the process of selection. Each of the functions of this role is considered and lots of number of activities are incorporated within each of these functions. Staffing the organization. For this, human resource planning is necessary. Before managing employees, it is essential to first hire them, select them, and then carefully nurture them for the purpose for which they have been employed. For that purpose, the human resource planning is required. This requires managers to determine the long-term human resource needs. After all, the process of employing new employees cannot be done in a day. Moreover, the needs have to be assessed beforehand, a couple of years beforehand, and then accordingly the whole process of employing new employees should then be unfolded. The second aspect is to assess current resources and identify the areas of needs. So let us first look at determining job requirements. This requires that HR managers must do the following: analyze various jobs in the organization, plan and organize the program of job analysis, decide on the sources of job analysis information that is required for job analysis, decide on the method for job analysis. There could be various ways in which the HR manager can do the job analysis. So he has to decide on the particular method for job analysis, collect job information, review the job information, see whether the information is reliable or not, and review it in various ways, develop the job description and lay down the job specifications on the basis of the outcomes of the job analysis. So you can see a number of steps are involved in the process of trying to assess what the job requirement and job analysis is. Now, the next aspect is recruitment of staff for the organization. The following steps are involved: develop and implement recruiting strategies bearing in mind the relevant legislations. Decide whether recruitment will take place internally or externally. Identify recruiting sources and attract prospective personnel. Settle those who have the highest probability of success. Selection of human resources. Now, there is a need to develop and implement the selection strategy, again in line with the relevant legislation. Then there is a need to provide selection shortlist for the line of management to make a decision. Next, placement of staff. Place the new employees on jobs for which they are selected. After placement, we have induction and orientation. The HR manager has to act as a facilitator for induction and orientation of new employees with respect to their jobs, and for them to relate to the fellow employees and to relate to the work. The new recruitees should become a part of the total organization, and this requires induction, training and orientation. The management of termination. So after having recruited and inducted people, at some point it may be required to terminate the employees. Advise the management regarding the strategic implications of terminating the employment relationship. Conduct exit interviews, develop a plan to replace the lost competencies, analyze the staff turnover and advise the management on pending problems and take corrective actions wherever necessary. Now, after this role, next comes the role of training and development. Unless the company has a training manager on staff, the human resource manager is responsible for conducting training for the employees. It requires that the human resource manager does the following: conduct training and development, evaluate training and development with regard to the return on investment, promote training and development in the organization. Then we have performance management. It is the responsibility primarily of the HR manager to design and implement a performance management system, that is the PMS. It is linked to the relevant HR system and aim to contribute directly to business strategy. What all is done? They assess the performance, use the outcomes of performance assessment as a basis of decision making, such as an increase in the salary, a promotion, a recognition, and so on. They also look into the grievances and complaints of employees regarding the performance management systems. Then we have labor relations and collective bargaining. Traditionally, this area was treated as industrial relations, IR. So we had two parts traditionally, personnel management and industrial relations. So labor relations and collective bargaining. Here the HR manager has to develop and communicate industrial policies and procedures in line with the legislation. Involvement in grievances and disciplinary hearings, lead negotiations wherever necessary, implement the termination procedures, assessment and management of the organizational climate and employee relations, liaise with the trade unions, implement the outcomes of the collective bargaining and negotiation. Then we have administration of policies, programs and practices. One of the policies is compensation management. To develop a compensation management strategy and policy in line with legislation and the organization's business strategy. Here, pre-test the compensation plan, introduce compensation plan to employees, install the compensation plan and evaluate it periodically, and manage the overall cost of labor. Apart from all of these functions, there is another role of the HR manager, that is information management. The HR manager has to provide current information regarding the employees to be used in the decision making process and the measurement of the HRM contribution to the organization. One of the major aspects is to conduct human resource accounting and to find out the cost and value of human resource working in the organization. It is also to advise the management regarding the trends in the emerging issues which are related from the data which is available. Also to conduct HRM research with the aim of solving problems in the organization. Then we have the ordinary administrative management, provide integrated HRM administration, that is PD and cost effective, to the receiver and the administrator. Integrated employee data management, all of this is a part of the HR manager's job. Financial management, some amount of financial management is also done by the human resource manager. The human resource manager coordinates the efforts with the accounting and finance division to ensure that employees are properly compensated. This involves to manage the budget for the HRM function, which involves training and development, IR, compensation, employment equity and so on. Then to negotiate the maximum fund for HR and the value added to the organization by demonstrating a sound understanding of the complexity of the business. To measure the financial impact of the overall human resource system. Now let us look at HR manager skills and qualities. As discussed, the HR manager has to play various roles in today's organization. They act as policy makers at one time, executors at another time. They have to consistently monitor and motivate employees at various levels for performing all these roles more effectively. It is essential that an HR manager has to have a certain set of qualities. Communication skills. The HR manager has to have excellent communication skills and, if possible, a command over various languages and should be able to have clarity in expression. Experience is very important because the HR manager has to deal at both levels. He has to deal with the management above and he has to deal with the people below. Educational background, there have to be certain basic requirements in terms of the educational background, because the HR manager has to understand technical skills, computer literacy and so on. Organizational ability. The HR manager is the kingpin as far as managing people. The original definition of management used to be people management, and that is the core role that an HR manager does even today. Mental alertness, optimism, broad vision, integrity, adaptability. So there are so many qualities that we would expect out of an HR manager. If we look at all of these, then they can be classified as business mastery, personal credibility, HR mastery and change mastery. So these are all the competencies that an HR manager has to have. Now let us sum up what we have seen so far. We said that the world is changing, and in this context the HR manager is no longer doing a routine job. A HR manager has got many roles to play, and the HR manager has to develop a comprehensive approach, and there are many programs, processes, aspects, dimensions that an HR manager has to take care of. That is employee hiring, retention of employees, performance management, alignment with strategic management. Then they should also have administrative capabilities, also assess the mood and climate of the organization and look after training and development. They have to develop even systems and processes within the organization. They have to look at teams, collective bargaining, look at the what we have called the IR function, the industrial relations functions. So therefore, employees who on the one hand have to deal with employees should be equally well versed with strategic and higher level issues in the organization.